Howdy, folks. Happy Monday. It's a smoky Monday in Buffalo. And, I read a story this morning that, last night I was going out for my Sunday night, coffee and sort of relaxation after doing some writing. And I looked up in the sky and obviously the sun was out because, it had been raining all day, but then the sun came out. But it was like a red ball in the sky. There was no glare, and it was because it was really smoky out. And today I read online that Buffalo got the highest rating of like some of the Northeast cities in terms of the smoky stuff from the Canadian wildfire. So thanks, Canada. But we'll start with the pre-show. Go ahead, Russ.
All right, so let's talk about. There's been a series that's been going on for I want to say maybe 3 years called Dark Side of the Ring, and what it's regarding wrestling, but they do a good job. Like Chris Jericho is part of the narration, and they really dig into certain stories. So it's story driven. It's not really like just documentary about a guy. So some of them are heinous. Some of them are just bad luck. Some of them are stories. There's a mix. And there was one yesterday on Adrian Adonis, and I remembered him. I said, wow, I remembered him from a couple WrestleManias. And for the group, I included one of his promos when he was going to go wrestle in Buffalo because, much to my surprise, he was from Buffalo, and I didn't know that. I don't know if you knew that, Mike.
I don't think so.
Yeah, he was from like the mean streets of Buffalo, and it's kind of funny because he would.
There are no mean streets in Buffalo.
Well, back when he was growing up, there were in the city. So and he would beat up people like that was his thing. Like he'd walk around with guys, and if he was collecting money, he'd beat you up, and then eventually he got into wrestling. And he kind of went with that Gorgeous George vibe, so that worked. And he was a heel wrestler. But I especially enjoy. I'll talk about the Dark Side thing in a minute, but I really enjoyed the promo because there's nobody like a homegrown guy that knows how to get to his own city. Like probably nobody when he was going. Well, maybe half the crowd maybe knew he was from Buffalo, and probably many didn't. So he rips the Sabres, he rips the Bills.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, first of all, it was almost like a misnomer calling him Adrian Adonis because if I remember correctly, he was massively overweight. He was
right. That's part of the shtick.
He was a pig. He was in, so. Yeah. So anyway, but go ahead.
But that was part of the shtick. But the thing is, so he's ripping the home crowd and stuff, and it's really it's funny the way that went down. But it wasn't funny the way he ended up dying in like a car crash. And so they talked about the early part of his career and this mysterious car crash. And I have to say, like I said, they do a very good job because like when the WWE does a documentary, they definitely fall short of telling you things.
It's so sanitized. It's ridiculous.
Right. Now and this one really doesn't. This one does real like interviews. They really try and get to the bottom of, hey, were these guys drinking? And it turns out they really weren't. It's just like, again, I know it sounds cliche, but they said they were trying to avoid a moose and it was in Newfoundland. And, that happens on the highway like it does.
To sort of bring it from wrestling, using something wrestling to bring it towards hockey. Now, I didn't know that if you remember the famous tag team of Edge and Christian.
Yeah,
Christian is from the Toronto area, and he is a abashed Maple Leaf fan. He's now in AEW. He's left the WWE, and Kev, AEW was doing a thing in Calgary a couple days ago, and apparently Christian, as part of his little pre-match shtick, basically came out and said, everybody wants out of Calgary. The Calgary Stampede sucks, and all the Flames want to be traded out of Calgary and want to go to Toronto or something. I think he threw he threw in the fact that he was from Toronto, sort of like that's the real city. Nobody wants to be in. I mean, okay, we know that they're there to stir up the crowd, but that's going a little bit over the line. I mean, I like
what you do. That's what.
Yeah, no, that's what wrestling's all about. I'm not a big wrestling guy. I don't really know much about it other than when my grandmother was alive. I used to watch it with her when I was young. But that's that's their shtick. They've made an incredible living. A lot of these guys
from stir up the narrative that way.
Yeah, stir the pot. There's no doubt about it.
That's what they do. They try and stir the pot, but it's funny, Mike. So not trying to stir the pot. The other day, there was a post on Twitter, and they said, "Tell me something. Tell me like an analytics lie." And I said that Mitch Marner can't play defense. And oh my God, this thing blew up. Like I had no idea what I was in for. And it was like I lit a fuse, and that thing went for like 6 hours. And at one point I did actually say, because I wasn't going to answer everybody, I was like, listen, there are actual analytics that point to the fact that he does play defense and he's better at it now. And there are people that think he can't play defense still.
He was nominated for the Selkie.
It doesn't matter. There's still, Mike, there's a horde of people that don't believe he can play defense. And it was just unbelievable, the onslaught.
This is this is the ongoing battle, Kev. And there's no point it'll never be solved. You've got a certain group of people who are the eye test group, a certain group of people who believe in the numbers. And then there's somebody in between like me. I mean, I think numbers are valuable, but I'm not a slave to them. And these idiots out there who are like, okay, Mitch Marner is a terrible defensive player because he's smaller and he's not physical. They're clueless. They're the same group who think Justin Hall is a good defenseman, and he's not. So how do I know this? Because I've watched the game since I was 4 friggin' years old. That's why. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I'm, you know how much I love sports, but I cannot get that intense over those kind of arguments. I just simply can't. I like the sport too much, but I mean, those kind of debates. I mean, how long have we? Yeah. Probably since I was young, I've had debates about who was a better player and all that kind of stuff. But, I'm done after about 5 or 6 minutes. After you make your point and I make mine, then we kind of move on. But there is that goes on. I mean, it's just incredible. You see it under all your stories and you're going like, what inspires
what's going on here? Yeah.
Yeah. What inspires people to get that worked up? But speaking of just a little bit off the thing here, yesterday, I've talked before, like I just can get caught up pretty easily in any kind of a sporting event, even if I don't really have a vested interest. And I, for some reason, turned on the Scotland Open golf tournament yesterday. And lo and behold, I just in time to see this guy named McIntyre hit this incredible shot on a really, really, really difficult finishing hole. Like it was, I think it was going averaging 1 stroke over, par for the thing. He was only the second guy to birdie it, and so I've just kind of given away the situation. But he was in a mess. He was out in the rough, and he hit this incredible shot. People were saying it's one of the best golf shots they had ever seen. Used like a 5 wood, and he got it within birdie range on that hole, and then took a 1-stroke lead in the Scottish Open. And McElroy was Rory was chasing him, and he needed to not only just tie him, he needed 1 stroke just to tie him, and he did that on a hard 17th hole. And then going into the 18th, his mission was simply to get through that for a playoff. You don't want to give up a stroke there because it's a tough, difficult hole. And then he hit a shot that was just as incredible as McIntyre did to get that, and he ended up making the birdie putt. He won the tournament, first time McElroy had ever won on Scottish soil. Wow. And it turned out to be a great event. And after I was done watching it, and I was saying, I would have never guessed on Friday that I was going to get caught up for 2 holes in the Scottish Open, but I certainly did. And anybody who was like me and stumbled into that, it was just a fun moment in sports. Probably as good a 15 minutes as you're going to find.
Yeah, I know somebody who got caught up in the Wimbledon final between Djokovic and I can't even remember the name of the player. Yeah, a younger player, and Djokovic, I guess, had a temper tantrum during the
always
match.
Does.
Right, and it was a 5-set class.
Yeah, I mean, my wife is a big tennis fan, and she watches it, and she had said after the youngster had taken a 2-1 lead in the sets, she goes, this is Djokovic's MO. Like, he lets you in it for a while, and then he comes back. And then she told me, just as I said, we're going to a fifth set, and this is where he usually takes charge. But guess what? He didn't take charge, and he lost it. So
Carlos Alcaraz. Okay. Anyway, okay, let's get started here.
Yep.
Hello, Hockey World. Today is Monday, July 17th, 2023.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
Kevin Allen, Detroit Hockey Now.
And I'm the calm and sedate Michael Lagello, and this is the Hockey Buzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com. Okay, some news and notes here. First of all, not big news here, but Connor Bedard signs his ELC with the Chicago Blackhawks apparently on his birthday, which is nice. It's nice symbolism there.
Yeah.
It's obviously a 3-year entry-level deal, and unlike the controversy 7 years ago, Russ, when it came to Austin Matthews and his ELC with Toronto, they gave him the full Schedule A, Schedule B bonuses up to $3.5 million if he hits all his marks. No controversy, no pissing and moaning. It was because that was Lou Lamoriello. But in the end, they just gave him all the bonuses and said, "Kid, go out there and do what you do."
Also, Connor sold a lot of tickets. He did. Yes. We can't forget that. The minute he was drafted, they were actually the minute the lottery happened, they were besieged with ticket requests. So, but of course you're going to pay him all those bonuses. I do think it was interesting. It was on his birthday. Did I hear right? Did they not have a development camp because they thought it would be too big with him in it? I don't know.
They didn't have a development camp. I heard it was because they thought a lot of their players had played too many games. They had some guys that were in the world championship.
You know what? I think you have it and you do the off-ice stuff. I don't know why you wouldn't have it.
They had some people there. They coming in. They just didn't have any competition.
Okay. That makes more sense. Because, I heard that, and I was like, really? Didn't have it? Okay. But at any rate, Connor Bedard's going to be big box office this year. I expect he'll at least be on national television a couple times.
Speaking of this development camp, this year I learned how far these teams now are going in developing players. The big thing at the Detroit camp was the fact that they, in addition to nutrition, what they've been doing for a while, and what you should eat, they brought in someone to discuss the importance of sleep, which for a hockey player, a carousing hockey player, that's probably important. Yes. And there was a funny anecdote that I don't know if Costa, the goaltending prospect, Sebastian Costa, whether he told it on himself or someone else spilled the beans, but he was pretty proud that he had, because they monitor their sleep, that he had gotten more than 8 hours of sleep in his bed. And he was pretty pleased, and he turned over his electronics to the person, and then the person came back to him and said, "Did you take your phone to bed?" He goes, "Yeah." And he goes, "Well, according to this, you only slept 6+ hours. The other 2 hours you were on the phone." And he just thought if he was in the bed 8 hours,
right,
that's all that mattered. But there's probably a lesson for all of us in that as well. I do
the same thing. I mean, I'm guilty. I remember Chip Kelly is the one who started this with the Eagles that I remember. I know they did it in college before that, and now I guess it's working its way into hockey. I don't have a problem with it. I think it's good, but I do think you can't let the coach use it against the players, though. You should really only use it for research purposes, because there are some people, look, sometimes there's nights that I get 5.5 hours sleep, and I'm fine. Not everybody gets 8 hours a night,
Yeah, no, that's honestly true.
I haven't had 8 hours sleep. The only time I get 8 hours of sleep is when I'm sick. It's it's just not normal for me. So, whatever. I mean, I'm sure they want these players to be well rested. I'm sure they want them to get to bed early, because what's the old phrase? Nothing good ever happens after 2 a.m.
11 p.m. is what Bo Simbrick used to say.
The time is moving. Yeah. So anyway, but now, interesting signing. Tanner Jeannot signs his 2-year deal with the Tampa Bay Lightning, $2.665 million. That's pretty much in line. I mean, Kev, he had 24 goals as a rookie. We talked about him a couple years ago when he was a rookie, and he did really well with Nashville. Last year, only had 6 goals between Tampa and Nashville. obviously, I think they're expecting him to bounce back, sort of like what Brandon Hagel did when he got traded from Chicago. That first year, he didn't play very well, and then last year, I think he was top 5 scorer for Tampa Bay. So obviously, with the exodus of guys like Maroon and Perry, they're hoping and expecting that Jeannot returns to the form that he had when he was in Nashville.
I don't think that the Lightning think that he is going to be that kind of level of scorer, but reality and truth is usually in the middle, and I think that's what they're counting on. That he'll be maybe a 13 goal scorer, but what they really want from him, he does continue to deliver, which is a real rough and tumble game. He's hard to play against. He has a level of belligerence that I think most coaches like to see. And they've lost a lot of that. They've lost their gumption. They've lost their irritating presence because they had to let those guys leave, as you said, Patrick Maroon and no Corey Perry, exactly. So I think it was an important signing. And again, it's below the average salary in the NHL. It's not one that's going to break the bank. And so I think they're pretty pleased to get him there, and he probably is happy with it as well.
Russ, you have to unmute yourself. Maybe log off and log back in if you can.
There's something that came up, so I got to run.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, sorry.
No problem. So yeah, we'll just do a quick show here. Now, Kev, you were talking about players that are yet unsigned, and I think that's interesting and probably what we're going to track over the next couple months. Obviously the 2 names that are out there that I think everybody sees, well, actually 3 names: Jonathan Toews, Patrick Kane, and Patrice Bergeron. We know about Kane. He probably isn't going to sign until it's closer to when he's back to health. Toews, I keep hearing different things. I hear he's going to retire. Then I hear he's not going to go back to the Blackhawks. And then I hear, well, he might go to Winnipeg because he's from Winnipeg. There doesn't seem to be any sort of hard and fast knowledge about what he's going to do.
No, most of the people I talk to just think he's going to retire. He's had enough, illness issues over the last couple of years, and he's, tired of worrying about that kind of stuff. So, that's the best guess. And then Kane, I think there's some strategy involved here. I think he wants to help. I think he still wants to go back to the Rangers, much to the chagrin of Russ Cohen. And by waiting longer and stuff, the Rangers can get their house in order to prepare to add him somewhere down the line. So that makes some sense in that regard as well. And then the Tarasenko thing, he's got new representation. Yeah. He's a guy that I think a lot of teams would be interested in, and I think he's just going to take his time because whoever gets him, knows what they're getting. I don't think there's any big surprise. But one of the guys I find really curious because I've watched him the last couple of years. He's a good hockey player. Is Pius Suter. I think the Red Wings would have re-signed him, but he wanted a multiple-year deal, and he's a very dependable player. Like he can play third line, fourth line, second line. He can slide up and down, very responsible defensively, can kill penalties, and consistent goal scorer, 13, 14 every year. Right. And I think that's where he's going to be. A real solid player. So I'm surprised he's still out there. I'm guessing it still has to do with the years he wants on a contract. I think he feels at this stage in his career he's deserving of a 2-year deal, and probably is. But he got $3 million from the Red Wings, and I don't think he's going to get anywhere near that in this environment. So, he may be looking at, somebody offering him 1.2 or 1.3 and for 1 year, and he's thinking, are you kidding me? But, really what are his options? Unless he wants to play in the KHL, which I doubt he does, I think he's going to have to accept that. He can't go back to Switzerland and earn that kind of money.
No.
And I think he wants to play in the NHL. So
he's probably going to end up with one of those teams that has cap space that's looking to fill their roster, like Arizona or San Jose or Anaheim or Chicago, on a 1-year deal because, if he has a good year, then he can turn around in unrestricted free agency next year and maybe get that multiple year offer. But yeah, I was a little surprised that it was a qualifying offer, right? If the qualifying offer was probably in the 3 range. Yzerman must have thought that was just too rich. That he would have settled for. But if he wants multiple years, I just don't think he's going to get. Nobody is going to get multiple years now, except for a guy like Matt Dumba.
Yeah, we do want to talk about Dumba too. But the one thing about Suter that I think, like, I wouldn't rule out a contender trying to find a way to fit him in, and it may come down because and I've talked about this before. It's a misnomer. Like, if you're capped out, that you can't afford an $800 or a $100,000 player. I mean, those bottom salary players are interchangeable. You move one out, you move another one in. That sort of thing. That extra $400,000 that he may be required to get that 1.2 or 1.3. They're always especially in this sort of situation, trying to get that extra 100,000 or 200,000. So that could cause problems. But I think he's played for poor teams since he got over here, and I bet he'd like to play for a good team.
Yeah. Now I mentioned Bergeron. That's up in the air right now. It depends. It sounds like Krejci is more definite that he's going to retire. Bergeron, apparently, him and his wife just had a 4th child. There hasn't been any kind of signal of him retiring. I haven't seen anything in terms of them being sure that he's going to come back. So really, it's up in the air. And I would think that the Bruins maybe are not pressing him because they realize how important it would be for him to come back. But they're probably going to have to get an answer from him, I would say, sometime next month, because I would think that they're probably going to want to make some sort of deal to fill up the middle. I don't right now. If he retires and Krejci retires, their 1 and 2 center are Pavel Zacha and Charlie Coyle. It's not exactly awe-inspiring.
No, you can make a case, certainly, and we've talked about this before, that they're the biggest unknown going into the next season. Like, they were obviously the runaway President's Trophy winner, and they had just an incredible season. I don't know any other word for it other than incredible. Or at least regular season. And then now you just don't know. I mean, are they in danger of missing the playoffs? Like, it's hard to tell. Like, there's still a lot of quality players on that team. And their goaltending is certainly, they've got, Allmark and Swayman, both those guys are high level goaltenders. So, are they going to keep both of them? I mean, if they bring Bergeron back, how much money will he play for? Will they need to make a move? Will they have to trade a goalie? And the goaltending market didn't develop the way we thought it would. I mean, Hellebuck is still available. Gibson is still available. So I don't know. I mean, is New Jersey going to take one of those guys?
Let's talk about that for a second, because Anthony's joining us. That's cool. Thanks, Anthony, for joining.
Hey, gentlemen. How are you?
This is the interesting thing about the goaltending situation around the league. New Jersey's a team that, like you said, Kev, and Buffalo is a team that I've written about extensively in terms of their goaltending. They seem to right now want to go into the season with Levi and Luukkonen. But I wrote for Hockey Now about how much rope will those young goalies in Buffalo get? Like, if in the middle of the season they're hovering around the playoffs or just outside of the playoffs, what Kevin Adams will do. And I look at the landscape of, who might be out there. And obviously Hellebuck, if he stayed in Winnipeg, would be on the block. And maybe Gibson would be. It would be tougher to fit those guys in the middle of the season. But if they don't go after those guys, then you're looking at goaltenders who are backups or on bad teams like Kaapo Kähkönen in San Jose or Antti Ranta in Carolina. And the point I'm trying to make is, if you get into the season, the options really are less for teams like New Jersey and Buffalo. And if they go after one of those guys, the price, even though their contracts are expiring, might be higher then than they would be now in the summer before the season starts. So I honestly, if I'm Buffalo, I'd be going after the goaltender now, because it's an unknown quantity. And with New Jersey, maybe they can wait, Kev, until the season because they'll still have the young assets. But if I'm Tom Fitzgerald and I'm Kevin Adams, I'm going after those goaltenders now. But they don't seem to want to be doing that.
Yeah, and I think both those teams are at the stage where it's important for the fan bases that they, make a major step, particularly in Buffalo, obviously. Like to me, it's a great imperative that they make the postseason next season. I mean, you got to act as if it's win or else, or get in the playoffs or else. I mean, it's just been way too long, and you've created some enthusiasm now with the fan base again that you haven't had in a while. You got to take advantage of it. You got to give those fans a reason to continue to be engaged. So I agree with you, Mike. I think it is the time to do something and just push all in to get in the postseason.
Now, Anthony, the Flyers situation with goaltending, we know the Flyers are not going to contend for a playoff spot. We know that they're rebuilding, but really everything is in limbo right now with Carter Hart until we find out that Hockey Canada report. And if he's cleared, then I think his name pops up again potentially as a trade commodity either before the season or before the deadline because he's a good young goaltender and he's making less than $4 million.
Yeah, I would think, that if they get to that point where we have a bit more clarity with the Team Canada situation, then it's possible then at that point, again, Danny Briere stated this team is in listening mode on a lot of their players, and certainly Carter Hart is among them. But at the moment, they have not, I think with all the uncertainty, they're certainly not getting, any offers that are enticing them to move off of him right now. And that's a big, and that's really where things stand. Could I see once things clear up, Buffalo being, Kevin Adams being on the horn, talking to Danny Briere about Hart once they have some clarity? Sure. Again, it's structured. It's called control. Hart has been in the heat of a playoff race before. Right. At a young age and helped, obviously he was able to backstop the team into the postseason. Granted, in a rather unique situation, but yeah, I could absolutely see that especially from a budgetary standpoint too, for what he would cost Buffalo. Although I'm sure the Flyers are going to want some decent pieces that are maybe close to NHL ready. That in return, that's probably what they're going to want. But again, that's based off of if he's in the clear.
Yeah, and Buffalo has been ranked near the top or at the top of teams in terms of their prospect pool. Mm-hmm. So any talk of them going after a defenseman like Pesce or Hannafin, any talk about them trading for a goaltender, those teams are going to be asking for Ostlund or Rosine or Kulik. Yeah. They're going to be, or Savoy. They're going to be asking for and right now that's where the Sabres don't want to trade those guys. But I don't think that's changing. If all of a sudden they go to Winnipeg in February and say, we want Hellebuck, even if it's an expiring contract, they're not taking a first round.
First word out of the mouth's going to be Kulik, probably.
Yeah. They want.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure of that, Mike. I think everybody, if you look over the last few seasons, almost all the teams have been resistant to giving away players that they've already drafted that they know. Like I know Steve Yzerman has said it's a little bit easier to give away a draft pick because you have no idea who that is than to get someone that you've actually invested a little bit of time in. So I think the currency now for those kind of moves have become, mostly draft picks or B-level prospects, getting the diamond in the rough. I think the fact that, Florida gave up, the current Buffalo goalie, Levi.
Yeah, because they had Spencer Knight. That's why they figured.
That's why that people look at that, but I think it was the special circumstances of having already had Spencer Knight that created that. So, I think that the cost is going to still be the same, but they might say, okay, you got to add some second round pick to it, or a second round pick, something like that. But I think teams have been pretty consistent in being able to hang on to the draft pick, including Toronto Maple Leafs. They said they weren't giving up their best prospect, and they didn't.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and
I'm just saying in terms of it from a initial ask, Kev. I certainly would if I'm Winnipeg. At the initial ask certainly would be first round out. But then you negotiate him somewhere in between.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, just to finish off here before we end the show, Dumba is clearly the best defenseman on the market right now. There's continued to be talk about him connected to Arizona, connected to San Jose. Funny thing is, connected to San Jose, I have a feeling that is in connection with them being able to pull off a Carlson deal, which would clear space for them to be able to sign Dumba. And Dumba's younger. He's coming off a probably the worst year of his career. He only had 14 points last year, so maybe they could get him on a better value. But Kev, I think if San Jose is the team interested, that's probably going to have to wait. Maybe he's in limbo right now, like D'Angelo was in limbo because everything is clogged up because of the Carlson thing.
That could be, and I think if he is going to San Jose, that would lead me to believe that Carolina is in the lead for that, because if Pittsburgh makes that deal, they've got to dump Petrie. So if Petrie's going back on $6 million. And how much does that leave for Dumba? Well, if you have both Petrie and Dumba equaling $11 million, I think I'd rather have Carlson for at 11.5. So,
do you think there's a possibility, Kevin, that Dumba maybe signs on a 1-year deal for?
Just
to try to reestablish his market for next offseason.
Right, when there's going to be more money, there'll be more.
Do a Klingberg, but see that's the cautionary tale. And we had Taylor Baird on Off the Post yesterday, and we were talking about the Klingberg situation in Dallas and how he turned down a deal. I think it was over $7 million on a 7-year deal. He turned that down, and then they went a different direction. And then he signed a 1-year deal with Anaheim. Had a bad year in Anaheim. Didn't do that great again with Minnesota once he got traded. Now he's in Toronto trying to sort of, I think, reclamate his career. But he's never getting that money back that he turned down in Dallas. There's a big risk if you go someplace, but I mean, he may not have any choice here. And I don't think anybody's going to sign Matt Dumba to a 7-year deal right now. So, So, couple other names. Obviously, D'Angelo is out there. Anthony, it's funny. He got benched at the end of the year. He still had 42 points. He still had a pretty good offensive
power play time. I mean, he did have power play time. He had opportunities, and he had a decent number of secondary assists last season for sure. So that part of his game, I think, is something that, again, if a team like Carolina or somebody else is using him more in that third pair, number 5, but using him on the power play, he will get points. He's still got an excellent shot.
Right.
And it's fairly heavy and fairly and decently accurate, although I saw plenty of wide shots from him last year as well. He's
right.
So it's a case of, I think he still has value. It's just, what he's going to get on the open market is going to be intriguing.
The other two names, and Kev, I put this guy, even though Pia Suter is 5 years younger than him. Thomas Tatar with New Jersey had 20 goals. He had 48 points, and he is not signed yet.
Yeah, there was a report out of Russia that the KHL has got their mitts on Tatar. Now, we weren't able to translate it to figure out if that's the truth or not, because you got to be careful with those reports.
Nice.
So we don't know, but there's been rumors that he's going over there. And, of course, that is the one league where you can make NHL-style money. And, if somebody was only offering, Tatar in the, 1.1, 1.2, 1 year range, he might be able to do better by going to the NHL.
Yeah.
And the other one is Josh Bailey, who got traded and bought out. Now, he may be at the end of it. He's 33 years old. He only had 25 points. There's been some speculation about Toronto sort of sniffing around on a veteran minimum deal. Honestly, if it's that type of thing, like they did with Zach Aston Reese last year, I don't have a problem with it because, he's a guy who could play third or fourth line for you. But I mean, he's not exactly sexy out there, Anthony. He's not somebody who's going to score 30 goals ever again.
No, he's probably going to be. I mean, he's going to either be in camp on a 1-year deal or a PTO.
Training camp invite.
Yeah, exactly. Somebody says, "All right, let's get a look. We'll get a look at see what he has to still maybe to offer us." But to me, I think he's in that territory. Certainly, I think on a 1-year deal for sure.
I kind of thought maybe he would end up with the Predators. Just
It's a possibility, Kevin. Yeah, I could see it.
Barry Trotz coached him, so yeah,
kind of knows exactly what he's getting, and so maybe that would work out there.
That's a possibility. Okay, great job, guys. We'll be back on Wednesday with another edition of the Hockey Buzzcast for the departed Russ Cohen. For Anthony Mangione, for Kevin Allen, I'm Michael Agello. Thank you for watching. And remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey.